I want to start this video today by asking you a question. Now, this is the Bal 27 as an example. It is a weapon in Modern Warfare 3 that you can use in Warzone right now today. And I wanted to ask you guys, how many attachments do you think this gun has in total? We're talking everything: muzzles, optics, lasers, stocks, rear grips. How many attachments fit this single assault rifle in Modern Warfare 3? Whatever number you've got in your head, think about it a little bit, because the answer is going to be terrifying. Because there are over 200 different attachments that you can use for a single assault rifle in Modern Warfare 3. And this includes 45 different muzzles, 15 lasers, 77 optics, and 47 underbarrels that are shared with every other weapon in the game as well. I'm going to show you some of these attachments because, quite frankly, I've never used any of these before. I've never used some of these optics before as somebody who is possibly the sweatiest man to have played Call of Duty and Warzone in quite some time, and somebody who plays this game religiously and daily. And some of these have just never even entered the realm of possibility for me. So if I've never used them, why would someone normal, casual, who plays a little bit here and there at home ever use them? The answer is that they don't, and that this game is overly complicated and complex for no particular reason. I mean, there are optics in this game that I assume probably have a pick rate of less than 1%. There are lasers in this game that do the same thing as other lasers, but worse, and the same that applies to underbarrels and muzzles. There are so many different suppressors, but objectively, some of them are just not worth using. Same with the underbarrels. There are underbarrels that do the same thing the other underbarrels do, but statistically worse. So you might be wondering to yourself, why am I here yapping to you about 200 different attachments for assault rifles, SMGs, so on and so forth? Well, it's because in Black Ops 6, this system has been greatly simplified, with less attachments across all of the weapons, and attachments that have very clear upsides and downsides, and honestly just a simpler system where a certain attachment will give you a certain benefit, and that's about it. And it's not even huge benefits either, they're just minor adjustments to your weapons. It's an entire simplification of the weapon system that makes it way more easier to understand, and a lot more enjoyable for the average player to put a build together without feeling like they're being overwhelmed left, right, and center. And this solves a lot of things for Black Ops 6 as a multiplayer game, but for Call of Duty Warzone, Modern Warfare 2 weapons and Modern Warfare 3 weapons are still going to be in the game. Now, granted, I'm fairly confident Call of Duty is going to do the classic thing of nerfing them all into oblivion and making them practically unusable. This sort of process of forced obsolescence is something they've done quite a lot when integrating new games, just because it's way too difficult to balance 200 different attachments for 100 and so different weapons that nobody really uses anyway. But the attachment system is just a byproduct of what is an overly complicated Call of Duty game. After going back and watching a bunch of Verdansk footage for videos that I'm making and producing for the not too distant future, it really struck me just how simplistic the older versions of Warzone used to be, and how much more enjoyable those systems were, because they were easier and accessible for everybody who was participating in them, and didn't feel like you were getting outdone. And this doesn't just apply to weapons and attachments, this applies to absolutely everything: inventory management, ammunition systems, items and equipment that are present in the game, even things like core gameplay scenarios like backpacks, and things like movement systems. All of these contribute to how complex or how accessible the game is, and it's something that needs to be radically overhauled going into the new version of Warzone. One of the greatest new things Call of Duty is doing going into this new iteration of Warzone with the Black Ops integration is that they're stripping away the backpack system. Now, for a lot of you, you might be wondering how much that's going to change the game, or maybe you feel like it's not going to change the game at all. But in reality, it's going to simplify the game at a massive level. No more sitting around looting through piles of loot to find the 4 different things you can stuff into your backpack in order to give you the best chances of survival. But most importantly, it means in actual gunfights and final circle scenarios, teams, players, and squads are going to have to make business decisions around what equipments they actually can use. The worst part about the modern era of Warzone is that you reach a final circle and get hit with 6 cluster strikes, 4 airstrikes, the kitchen sink, your nan's slipper, everything's getting thrown in, everyone has unlimited ammo, everyone has unlimited self-revives, everybody has every piece of equipment they need at all times. And that never used to be the case in Warzone. You actually had to look around for things and make calculated decisions as to whether or not you wanted a plate box or an ammo box, and you actually had to work with some of your boys and your teammates in order to make sure that everybody was looked after. And all of that's been stripped away by the backpack system. The backpack system has allowed people to have multiple grenades in their pockets, it's allowed them to have every single piece of equipment they'll need, and also overwhelm opponents with kill streaks that are otherwise fairly unfair in terms of what used to be normal in Warzone. And I'm going to give you a thought about this, just something that kind of simplifies everything I'm talking about here with the backpack system. In the old version of Warzone, back in the days of Verdansk, think about how many end zone circles or games that you lost exclusively just to being shot at. Now, in the new version of Warzone, think about how many games and end circles you've lost because you've been killed by an airstrike or a grenade or an explosive. It's two radically different worlds. We have the earlier versions of Warzone, which were about working together and having cool gunfights and winning fights, and then we have the new version of Warzone, which is more about how much you can fit into your back pocket. Less equipment, less items, less explosives is going to greatly simplify how Warzone is going to work in the Black Ops 6 era. It means that people are going to be more readable, you'll be able to understand what they do and don't have. The whole system is just going to be much better, and it was arguably a system that never needed to change in the first place. Black Ops 6 is kind of going through an overarching effort to make Call of Duty feel arcadey and feel accessible again, and I'm very much here for it. The attachment system's more sensible, the backpack system in Warzone is more sensible, but the biggest part of the game, and the core part of the game that's the most confusing for new players, or players who are trying to learn this new system, is in fact the Omni Movement system. I produced a video about how to use Omni Movement effectively, and I got a lot of support on that, so thank you for that, and if you have dropped a like on this video, it's greatly appreciated. But the biggest thing that surprised me were the number of people not only in the comment section, but also in my live streams, talking about how the game felt clunky, when this is the least clunky Call of Duty that we've had in a number of years now. It's the most fluid feeling COD I think we've ever felt. But the reason I think this perception exists of the game being clunky is because I'm somebody who adjusts 75 different settings before I even play the game, and those settings are overarchingly beneficial to how I play. In the case of Black Ops 6, the biggest setting that people hadn't adjusted is tactical sprint assist, slide assist, and dive assist. And what this meant was that whether you sprinted in any given direction, you just got the full Omni Movement smooth experience. You didn't have to click or double click into your analog stick to make the sprint system make sense for you, it just automatically did it regardless of which direction your stick was facing in, resulting in a much more smoother gameplay experience. But this system is too complicated and it makes no sense. You shouldn't have to adjust 3, 4, 5 different settings in the game in order to produce smooth gameplay, because it creates an unlevel playing field between people who are a little bit confused and want to try and get better and actually will make those changes, versus normal players who don't feel like they should have to change those settings in order for the game to work as intended. And they shouldn't. The Omni Movement system should just be simple. It should just work the second you pull the game out of the box, and you should go into a tutorial for them to explain how some of these new systems work. The training arena was surprisingly quite good at that. If Call of Duty really wants the Omni Movement system to be a success, they need to get rid of these settings, and they need to get rid of tac sprint. The only reason these settings exist in terms of you sprinting sideways and not having to click into your analog stick versus having to click into your analog stick is simply because the tac sprint animation still exists. But there's kind of no need for it. Tac sprint is only slightly faster than regular sprint in the current iteration of Black Ops 6 and what will be the future of Warzone. So the obvious solution here is to slightly increase the overall movement speed of the game and get rid of tactical sprint, making everybody have the same amount of animations, making everybody have the same simplified set of controls for sprinting, and take away all of the clunk from the game, allowing Omni Movement to be an accessible, arcadey system that everybody can enjoy without having to change multiple different things in their game. And it's such a simple idea. You get rid of tac sprint, you make the movement speed a little bit faster. If you're sprinting with a gun in your hand, Omni Movement just works as it normally works. And if you pull your knife out, you move a little bit quicker. This is an expectation that first-person shooters have had for the best part of 2 decades now, where moving with your knife is faster than moving with your weapon. The plan for Black Ops 6's Warzone integration is that having your knife out will give you infinite tactical sprint, which, again, is just an extra animation that doesn't really need to be there if the system wants to be simple and enjoyable for everybody to play with. You should just have one universal sprint speed that doesn't require you clicking into buttons or changing settings to get the most out of it, and then another universal sprint speed for when you're using your knife in order to create an easy and accessible scenario for everybody to enjoy. The other big one for me is that a lot of people felt like their slides and dives were quite unresponsive in Black Ops 6, and the reason for that is because they either don't have a keyboard and mouse or they don't have a pro controller. Now, for those of you who are unaware, in Black Ops 6, whenever you enter a slide, whether that's backwards, forwards, or sideways, you can end that slide early by jumping. Now, for somebody like myself with a customized pro controller where I have a paddle on the back that makes jumping very, very easy, that is something that's very easy to do. But if you're using a standard configurated controller, jumping out of a slide is actually really hard to do even if you change your controller layout. Now, the simple solution to this is to simply make it so that when you click into your right analog stick to slide, or if you're still using circle, which you probably shouldn't be because you definitely should be playing tactical, that pressing the same button again will end that animation early. I personally slide and dive by clicking into my right analog stick, and I think most players tend to lean towards that direction because it's a little bit more accessible and easier to do. So it should just be that when I click into my stick to initiate a slide, clicking it again stops it, rather than me having to hit the jump button. We really are just talking about the most minor of tweaks that are going to greatly improve how this game feels to the average player, and that's absolutely something that should occur. These needs for 7,000 different settings to change all the time should just be defaults for most people. The best era of Call of Duty and the best era of Warzone is when everything was very simple to understand. Everybody was using the same FOV because they were on consoles. Everybody was using the same console systems. Everything just made sense. Whereas now we're in an era where it feels as though you need to change multiple things in order for things to actually work. There are 200 different attachments. The backpack system is thankfully going away, but that has been a concern. And there's just too much going on. And I say this as somebody who has thousands of hours in this game, and I say this as somebody who streams it every day. You can have complexity in design without making it overcomplicated. Call of Duty Warzone can have depth in how it plays and how it plays generally, without having to give you 7,000 different options on how it plays. I'm really curious to see you guys' thoughts and feelings on simplifying Call of Duty Warzone below. Did you find Omni Movement clunky? If you did find Omni Movement clunky, did you know that you had to change settings in order to get it to actually move the way most people have it moving? If so, let me know in the comment section down below. Drop a like, and I'll see you again in the next one.